Welcome to Let's Talk Near Death, the podcast show where we talk about life, death, and experiences somewhere in between. My name is Kirsty Salisbury, the host of the show, and I welcome you to join me as I talk to everyday people with not so everyday experiences. You may also wish to join the conversation on the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page or access additional VIP content as a premium subscriber via Patreon. For just a couple of dollars a month, you can get an early access to episodes, additional bonus content, and your chance to connect with my guests. To do so, simply visit patreon.com/Kirsty Salisbury. Let's talk near death.
I felt like there was this inner demon within me. I could not see any way out except for to take my life. It was this vibration. It was my spirit leaving my body. And I can quickly discern that this is in the shape of a man and that he's made of light. And I experienced my life from beginning to end. And immediately I felt myself back in my body.
Today I'm talking with Angie Fenimore, who had a near-death experience as a result of a suicide attempt. What she experienced wasn't so much a matter of love and light, but more of a darker near-death experience. Today, Angie is the author of Beyond the Darkness, My Near-Death Journey to the Edge of Hell and Back, and she's also a writing coach. She's doing amazing things. So Angie, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Angie, it was 1991, and I think it's probably pretty fair to say that life was tough for you. Things were going on that weren't easy. So what was it that made you get to the point where you wanted to end your life?
Well, something that we understand better now, and we didn't back in 1991, is that often childhood trauma surfaces in adulthood. It doesn't, it's not like, oh, there's a trauma. Children just deal with it and learn to cope and then keep moving on and living a normal life. And I had a lot of pretty tragic things happen. My mother had left when I was 9 years old and joined a cult, and bona fide cult. They were doing horrific things, one of which was they were starving this little boy, Petey. He was only allowed bread and water once a day. This was deep in the recesses of Bryce Canyon. 5-mile hike in, no power. Everybody's living in teepees. Well, I fed Petey over Thanksgiving weekend. I snuck food to him. And so the guru, he punished me by not feeding me. And so that was kind of inciting incident right there. And I developed, a real disdain for authority, number one, and really felt like I'd lost my mother right then and there. And we stayed with our father. It was my younger sister and I, Tony, and he was already alcoholic, but he became, it was severe after that point. And he also sexually abused us. And not to mention, we were like dragged to horrific things. We lived in Vegas, and Vegas is pretty seedy anyway, and we were exposed to a lot that children should not be exposed to. So all of that got buried. And then when I was a young mother myself, my first marriage was really controlling and abusive. And you should know when I say this, like, I've actually healed from all of this. And, I have a real appreciation that all human beings are just doing the best they can with what they got at the time. And there's not even forgiveness, because there's no need for forgiveness. It's just we're all doing this, right? And we're all getting some things wrong and some things right. So it's not like there's any animosity when I say this, but this is where I was at the time. Yeah. And so there was this one particular night, I went out to go get milk, and we lived in Okinawa, Japan. My first husband was an Air Force officer, and we were stationed there. And it's an island. Okinawa is an island. I don't know what I was thinking, but I didn't come home for 24 hours. I just went to the beach. I went to the movies the next day, and I just couldn't make myself go home. I felt like there was this inner demon within me that I was going crazy. I really thought I had multiple personality disorder. I could not control my own impulses. I would be sackcloth and ashes and this great mom for 6 months, and then I'd go off the deep end and just like be like, who was that person that did these terrible things? Like, I went through a binge where I was shoplifting, like thousands of dollars worth of, like, just stuff, alcohol, drugs, you name it.
Yeah.
I partook. And so it was really that I could not see any way out, except for to take my life. And I felt like when I walked in after being gone for 24 hours and my 2 little boys, who were then 2 and 5 years old, and my husband were on the living room floor kneeling in prayer for my safe return, that was just it for me. I didn't feel like there was any way out except to just take my life. So I really believed I was doing my children a favor.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's a lot to be going through. I can understand that you got right to the very end in that. So what was it about coming in and seeing your family on their knees in a form of prayer? I mean, that shows that they loved you and they were caring for you and worried about you, but that made you want to end your life even more?
Well, I felt like there was no end to this, that this was going to keep happening.
Right.
And so it was like I was in hell. You know, my life was just exhausting and excruciating. I couldn't see a way out. There was no therapy for this back then.
Exactly.
Nobody understood this. And I had memories resurfacing from childhood, things that I had forgotten that were really traumatic to put it together. And then, but the biggest thing was just how are my boys going to be okay if I keep on this path? Because, you know, I knew that whatever I was dealing with was a result of my childhood. I knew that much. And I just didn't want to, I really thought they'd be better, that my husband would remarry some nice woman that would be great with my children.
Yeah. Wow. So what?
Twisted mindset, you know?
Yeah, I can understand though. I mean, there's a lot going on there. There's a lot to think through.
Right.
So you then went on to try and take your life?
I did. So it was 24 hours later. It was the next day after I came back. My oldest boy, who was 5, would not talk to me. He was just curled up in a ball all day long, so angry. And my 2-year-old would not let me put him down. And that was really what it was, is a whole day of, you know, feeling like I'm traumatizing my children. I'm not good for them. And so that night I waited until about 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning till everybody was sound asleep. And I'm historically a poor sleeper. And so it was not unusual for me to be up in the middle of the night. And I swallowed a prescription, the whole thing, downed it. It came back up. Tried to slit my wrists, and that was actually very difficult to do. And so then I started taking everything in the medicine cabinet slowly so that I wouldn't upchuck it. And came morning, I wrote a note to a neighbor, said I wasn't feeling well, and asked her to watch my boys. We did that all the time. And sent my kids over to her house and laid down on the couch. Must have been about 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning, and I could just feel it was happening. It was this vibration like I've never experienced before or since. It was my spirit leaving my body, and it's in a natural state like that. It's not an easy thing for the spirit to slip out of the body when it's not your time, and it's, you know, self-induced and all of that. So there was this huge rumble, like I was laying in the belly of a 747 that was landing. And I even looked to see if there was an airplane coming down, if there was an F-15 coming down in my yard. It was that powerful. And that's when I realized, nope, this is internal. And so I realized it's happening, and I wanted to watch. I had a stepmother who'd had a near-death experience who told me about it. Okay. And this was back before, near-death experience wasn't known or talked about. But she told me that she went to the corner of the room and watched while the doctors were working on her after a car accident. And so that's what I expected. So I opened my eyes so I could watch. And immediately I felt myself back in my body as soon as I did that. And so I closed my eyes again, and this happened a few times. So when I closed my eyes, I was seeing like this yellow, I was surrounded by this yellow membrane with like red capillaries that running through it. And at the time I didn't know what it was, but I finally realized that my will was part of this. I had to will this. So I kept my eyes closed and I willed it. And the minute I passed over, I was taken back to my birth. And that's what I was actually seeing, was my mother's birth canal, frankly, and experienced myself being born, like my arms across my chest and like tucked in like this, and this experience of euphoria, and which really surprised me. And then I was pushed out of the birth canal, and she was holding me, looking at me, and I was confused a little bit because I look very much like my mother, and I thought I was seeing myself. I wasn't sure. But I was also experiencing everything from her point of view. And then I realized I'm experiencing from everybody's point of view as this progressed. So I went right into what they call the life review. And I experienced my life from beginning to end, all the way to where I was lying on the couch. But I didn't just see it. You know, it was on a screen before me, but I experienced it. I couldn't change anything, but I experienced what it was like for everybody who interacted with me all along the way. And as soon as it ended, it abruptly ended, and then I was surrounded by darkness. And there was a presence standing next to me. I couldn't see anybody, but I knew that I knew him, and I knew he was male. And there was a feeling, a thought, if you will, emanating from him that I could just perceive. And it was, this is your life. This is the life you lived. There was no drama, no significance about it. Just, this is it. And so I'm in this darkness, standing on nothing, just surrounded by darkness, but it's like space where you can see. So it's not like a blackened room where you can't see anything. I could see, but there was nothing but darkness. And I'm looking for other people that I had known that had passed. My grandmother, a cousin, and there's nobody there. And so I swung my head to the right while I'm looking for family members. And there was a line of teenagers next to me. And there were about 6 of them. And I leaned over and looked at them. And the girl on the end, I knew she'd killed herself. She had this long, stringy hair. She was about 16. And I thought, what in the world could be so bad in your life that you take your life? Which was very interesting that I'm having this while I've done the same thing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And then the kid next to me, tall teenager, dyed black hair, and I'm noticing all these things, thinking that's very interesting. I would have thought that dyed hair and eyeliner and a leather vest over a white t-shirt and combat boots, that would have been something that is like, that's physical form. You wouldn't take it with you, right? But there he was. And as soon as I had the thought, oh, we're the suicides. Like I put it all together, we're the suicides. He looked at me and they were just dead and empty. But that's when I realized my thoughts were actually audible. And so much of this happened almost simultaneously. But as soon as I had that thought, we must be the suicides, I was taken from them. They were left there. And I was taken through this darkness. And I don't know if I traveled the span of the planet or if it was a football field, the length of a football field. I just knew that I was on the planet in another realm, surrounded by darkness, and just taken it almost like the speed of light, upright, through this darkness until I saw a plane. It was like a beltway ahead of me. And there, as far as I could see on the left, there were just people. And they were all in these dirty white robes, which I thought was very interesting. I thought that would be something that's figurative. And then I just like lit down in this place, just standing. And I asked this question at the same time in my mind, what is this? And I heard the word come back to me, purgatory, which I don't have a Catholic background. That's a Catholic term. I have no idea why that's what I heard, but that is what I heard. Yeah. And so I dropped down into this place, and I'm surrounded by these people who are completely disconnected from each other, like beyond anything you can imagine in this world. And there was just like, really, they were just like saying things like, if only you had done this, then I wouldn't have had to, like, stuck in a moment in their lives and not present to anybody else around them at all. And I could feel this darkness, and it was like a tangible darkness. It was like molecular, and I could feel it, like sucking the life right out of me the longer I was there. And I could see it. It was like, I could see this. It was like this foggy substance. And there was a man that was kneeling in front of me. And he was looking at me, and he was the only one that actually noticed my presence there. And I had a thought about him. He was just squatting down, and he was in a filthy white robe like everybody else. And I knew his eyes were blue, but I was seeing in grayscale. I knew he'd killed himself, and I knew he'd been there a long time. And whatever that means, by the way, we can talk about that in a minute, like time. Mm-hmm. And in particular for your listeners who have lost people to suicide. And I just had this thought, maybe this is Judas Iscariot, or I wonder if this is Judas Iscariot, who I had known to have killed himself. And my experience of him was that he'd been there for thousands of years. And as soon as I said this, it's a testimony of Christ, is what that is. I was like acknowledging that I believe in a God, right? Yeah. And that triggered the rest of the experience. So as soon as I had this thought, suddenly outside this invisible barrier, like I knew we could not leave. And outside this barrier, I see this pinpoint of light, like a star in the distance. And it travels to me just very quickly. And I can quickly discern that this is in the shape of a man, and that he's made of light, and his robes were flowing and his hair was flowing. And I knew this to be God. And he stopped some distance from me. And he says to me, "Is this what you really want?" Which I was just kind of, number one, blown away that I really just believed that I had no value. And like, I got the attention of God himself at number one. And so I'm kind of like dumbstruck. And then also that he said, "Is this what you really want?" I had no concept of wanting this. I had no concept of choosing this. I just believed it was the only thing in front of me that I could do. The only thing that in particular could save my children. And then he just said all these things. You can't skip over parts. We've all done this. You've done some pretty horrible things, just like this very real kind of conversation. Mm-hmm. And I said, but I don't have any choice. And then in that moment, I felt this presence that was with me at the beginning of the experience, who was standing with me when I had my life review, who, emanated this feeling, this is your life. I felt him next to this deity, but I couldn't see him. And he started to speak, and as he did, I could see pinpricks of light coming through the darkness. And he said, "Don't you understand? I've already done this for you." And as soon as he said it, there were three things that happened all at once. I'm in three different locations experiencing all of this. So the first is I'm standing there in this plane looking at these two beings of light. The next is that I am behind them, observing them. And the second being, who I knew to be Christ, was communicating my entire life, beginning to end, to who I knew to be my Father in heaven. And just saying she doesn't understand, and just communicating all of it like through light in this instantaneous download, if you will. And at the same time, I was in Christ's body on the earth in the Garden of Gethsemane, experiencing him, experiencing my life from beginning to end as if it was his own. That is what he did.
That's phenomenal.
It was like, and I thought nobody could understand. Well, he did. Like, he experienced it like I experienced it from my point of view. And just like love and compassion beyond what I can even express. And then it was like, almost like there was this choice presented to me to go back, but no words. And I just said, but I can't. I don't know how. I don't know. I can't make this work. And then I was shown my two boys, who, by the way, are now 34 and 31 years old. One is in elementary education and the other one is an RN and going to medical school and married and has three lovely children. But I was shown their lives. I was shown what would happen to them if I were to stay dead. And my oldest boy was taken to about 21 years old. And he was like, I just saw this glimpse of him. I saw the roller coaster of his life, what his life was like emotionally. And then taken to this moment where he's just standing there and he's empty and dead in his body, still breathing in and out, but dead. And then my second boy was taken to about 7 or 8 years old, and he was taken from this world because he just could not do this at all without his mother. And so then I just issued the tiniest, not even a word, just okay, just this smidge. And as soon as I did, it was like I was up above this plane, watching these people lighting back down into this plane, and I am above it, surrounded by angels that are just past me so fast and so busy that I could hardly make them out. And I asked the question, what is this? And I could still hear the voice of God, and I was just told, they are helping you, and they have been all along. That's what they're doing. They're helping all of us. And then there was just this download of information. Much of it I was not permitted to take with me back across the veil, but it was that whole ripple effect. I call it the dandelion principle. One dandelion has the power to, no kidding, populate the entire globe. One dandelion. That's how our words are. I could see how our words are so powerful, how prayers are so powerful. And I could just see the state of our planet. And I could see that we don't get to past about 2015, and I saw this come and go at about 2013, where there's a shift that begins to take place. There's a tipping point. And I saw that happen, where there are enough of us who won't tolerate the world the way it is, and things start to change. I saw that darkness it's a creative medium, is what it is. And without darkness, there is no light. So it's not just it's a bad thing. It's just a thing that allows for darkness to exist. And then we can choose. We can choose all, in anything, we have choice. But what's the difference between somebody who, has no choice, and then somebody who has all the choice in the world and doesn't know it? It's the same. And we are like that. We have all choice all the time. And we don't experience choice because we're in this very solid concrete world. So I traveled back through this darkness, and then opened my eyes, and I was on the couch, flung my legs down, sat up, and I looked at, I started looking around the room, and everything was vibrating, and I could see on a molecular level. I could see the molecules of my couch vibrating. We are couch serving you, serving God. My floor. We are floor serving you, serving God. All the way to the smallest to the largest organization of matter. I could see the light and the darkness in everything, from my TV was glowing light. Very interestingly, my houseplants were made of light. Trees were sentinels on this planet. And they do far more than just provide oxygen, but they're made of light. So I could still I don't always physically see this way. It does return to me from time to time, but I do spiritually see this way. So that's it. So then, so fast forward, there came a point when my oldest boy was 21 years old, and he had done a no-no and cleaned out my bank account. He was a signer and decided to go buy his girlfriend an engagement ring. And I found out because I was on a vacation with the whole family, and my debit card stopped working. And so I got my statement at 1:00 in the morning when I returned home, and there it was, and it was obvious what had happened. And he was in the room with me in the living room, and I said, "What did you do?" And I look at him, and it's that moment in the near-death experience where he's standing in front of me, and I hear a voice say, "Give him your coat also." And so we were, I kept reaching out to him. We were kind of estranged for about 4 months, but he finally got it. It's like, oh yeah, you can't mess with my love. I'm sorry. That's not going anywhere. And so got over that. The kid is amazing. And and I now have 3 more children, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So, yeah. So something I want to address before I forget is about, for your listeners who have lost people to suicide. If you've lost somebody to suicide, the most powerful thing you can do for them is to forgive them. Nobody actually knows. No 2 people have the same near-death experience. I know 3 people who have had visitations from close loved ones who they've lost to suicide, who've come back to tell them, I'm okay. Mm-hmm. And something that I understand now, because, I've had all this life. I was 27 years old. It was a couple days before my 27th birthday. I'm 55 now. I've lived a lot of life, right? So there's something that I understand too about this, and that is that it's just a place, and I don't think everybody goes there, frankly. It's just a place to sort out and to take responsibility and not like it's punishment. That's not what it is. It's to see through everybody else's eyes. It's walk a mile in my moccasins. And I do believe, because I do have lots of experience now with, if I go stay someplace haunted, let me tell you, they come talk to me.
Wow.
Having had those experiences, I'm pretty clear that those people that I saw talking to themselves were actually, they might have been talking to Christ as well. They may have been talking to loved ones. Time is not real. It's not real. And it's a function of the rotation of the planets. I mean, you don't get very far off of Earth and it's not the same, right? Yeah. But they're working out their own, coming to terms. And because when you can forgive others, because that's the experience that most people, are having. It's like a lack of forgiveness for themselves or for others. Once you experience forgiveness, there's nothing but light and love. That's all there is. So they're working it out, and they're not left, okay, you're going to go to hell. I don't even believe that in hell, frankly. I don't even think that was hell. That was just a place, and a place to work out my own salvation, frankly.
Wow, Angie, thank you. I'm taking it all in, and it's just, this is the most phenomenal experience. There's so much in there, but firstly, I want to say thank you for sharing, and thank you for clarifying. I get quite a few emails from our listeners, and often I hear, I've just lost somebody, either to suicide or lost them suddenly in an accident or some crisis moment. And the question is, do you think that they're okay? Do you think they're safe? What's happened with their spirit? And I love that you put it back to saying, well, it's an individual experience, that no 2 NDEs are going to be the same, because it's all different on what we live, how we live our life, what we experience, and the scenario going around, the circumstances. So I want to acknowledge that and say thank you for sharing such a phenomenal story and what you've been through. However, I do have a lot of questions. My mind, I'm actually struggling with this one, because my mind is just going 100 miles an hour, because I want to know so much more. So can we just go back? You talked about how it's phenomenal, because you tried quite a few times to kill yourself in that 24-hour period.
I did.
It wasn't just a one-off thing. You tried to slit your wrist, you tried to down a whole container of tablets, and then you tried to take a slower approach.
Yeah.
You've got some amazing things to be here for.
Yeah. I tell you, and that was not the first time. I'd had a couple years earlier, when I was pregnant with my second child, I had a loaded shotgun in my mouth and my toe was on the trigger. And I couldn't do it because I was pregnant. And I was plagued with this from the time I was 14.
Yeah.
I had suicidal ideations from 14 on, and had planned it many times and had gotten that close. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it is amazing. I'm so happy you're still here. I'm so happy you're here to share your story with us. So going back, you're lying on the couch, you have taken this cocktail of drugs and you're feeling the vibration, you're coming up out of your body. You talked about how you went through the birth canal and you saw your entire life before you and you experienced it at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know that you were dead?
Yes. When did I know I was dead? I know for sure I knew when I was standing in the line with the teenagers, because that's where I was just like, oh, we're the suicides.
Yeah.
It was actually, no, I'll tell you what it was. It was after the life review ended and I'm surrounded by darkness. That's when I knew I was dead. Yeah, I didn't actually put together what that was, life review, because I didn't even know really, except for what my stepmother had said about her near-death experience. I didn't know it. I didn't even have a term for near-death experience. It wasn't until after, when I went and sought help with a counselor who, like, bless his heart, gave me George Ritchie's book, Return from Tomorrow, who said, oh no, that's a life review. I had to be told that that's a life review.
It was pretty different back then though, right? We're talking 1991. Yeah. We didn't have the internet in the same way we do now. We didn't have all the stories. That's what I love about what we're doing and about how everybody's sharing their stories with me, is because we're opening up an awareness around this conversation. But back then, there was no conversation. So I'm not surprised that you really didn't know what was happening.
Right.
So you had the life review, you saw your life. Was that painful to watch your life, like painful emotionally, or what was going through your mind as you were watching your life review?
Yeah, what's interesting is I was pretty victim-y at the time. You know, I had a lot of grudges towards my father, towards my mother, especially in particular towards my stepmother, towards my husband. So it was eye-opening, is what it was. In particular, the big thing at the beginning where my mother is holding me and I'm experiencing from her point of view and my point of view. She was 18 years old when she had me. It was just this like complete aha for me. Number one, she wanted me. I had forgotten, you know, and I was all about how it was for me, you know, and so it was really revelatory that way. And what was interesting too is, you know, there were places where I was like, I kind of got the short end of the stick with some people, and there was just no assertion of right or wrong about any of it. It was just, this is life. This is what your life looked like. And this is what human beings do. And not like there was anything right or wrong about it. It's just, these are the facts, Jack. And so like I came back a different human being. I came back not the same human being. And I really just, I can't judge for very long, that's for sure. Just because I'm just really clear. We're all just doing what we're doing. And this is, you know, for so many of us, we just get caught up. And it begins when we're toddlers and we're bumping our chin on the ground. The ground is hard and we start resisting getting hurt. And so we build armor and we have all this survival machinery. And then that starts reacting to each other, to it. You know, I just really get that it's, you know, anytime anybody is doing something that looks awful, they're likely reacting to something that happened when they were 4. And just tons of compassion. That's really what I came back with. Forgiveness and compassion.
Wow. And I bet you needed a boost of that as you're coming back into the life that you really couldn't put up with, and you tried to leave it. And so you come
and
back
that's your access to freedom. It's really compassion. It really is. It's so much freedom.
Yeah. And so you then go from the couch, you've come out of your body, you've had your life review, you go to would you call it the void, this dark place?
Yeah, I don't even
Talk
know
about a
what to
void.
call it. It was just like space. I don't even know. We could call it that.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't
And,
have a word for it.
and you were
Yeah.
quite aware of your body, because
I was,
you're looking at these teenagers saying, well, you know, she's wearing the black clothes and the Converse sneakers and things like that. Were you aware of your own body?
so I didn't look down to see what I was wearing, because when I passed over, I was wearing like a robe, I believe, maybe like dark clothing. But I was so like, holy cow, this stuff happening. I've really died. You know, I've done it, all of this stuff. And then, so I didn't bother to look, to notice. I had a sense of myself um, just as a being rather than the personality that I am, you know?
Was there any,
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
was there any kind of sense of relief that finally I've done it? Everything will be okay?
Actually, I'm sad to say I was really proud of myself because I had wanted to do this for so long. And I viewed it like, okay, yay me. And I'm, and there was also in the background that I wasn't dealing with was this get even. Like, I'll show my father, I'll show my mother, I'll show my stepmother, I'll show my husband.
Yeah.
I mean, and then I have complete compassion and forgiveness for myself that's where I was too. I didn't have any tools to deal with any of this,
Yeah, you would just do what you could do.
I didn't even know that what had happened to me as a child was like tragic.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
It's pretty, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Okay, so you are then in this place, you're with the teenagers. You then leave there and you talked about going up and you were going at light speed across.
So I was going forward. Like that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then I lit down on this beltway, which there was nothing supporting it that I could see that was visible. There were invisible barriers, like an invisible barrier on the back and an invisible barrier on the front and something supporting that was invisible. It was just out in the middle of this darkness, which was, I knew I was on the planet. I knew I was in another realm on the planet.
Ah, okay. And you feel like that realm, can we access that realm?
So I think that it punches through when we're experiencing something of a dark nature. Like, for example, I went and stayed, I cannot remember the name of the place, but it's in Gettysburg, and it's where the Battle of Gettysburg came to a head. And it happened to be the same night that they were having a ghost tour, and which they only did about once a month. And I could feel the energy in that house. I knew immediately that there was sexual assault in that house. I could feel the darkness. I could feel this entity at one point sitting next to me, just like trying to just like, they know I can see them and feel them. They can, they're aware of that. And I think this entity was like disembodied, had never been in a body, and was just, made of darkness. And so then I was up in the attic where the sharpshooters were up in the attic. And after the tour guides did their piece, there's benches, we're all sitting on the benches, they leave. There were some amateur ghost hunters there that night. They set up a chair, got their little flashlight and their little recorder, and all the stuff that ghost hunters do. And they're asking questions, and I'm just sitting there with my friend, and they're asking, do you know your dad? Da, 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 da. We don't know any history. We haven't been told anything really about the house. And then all of a sudden I feel this anger, this entity, this anger come barreling through. Other people later told me the door slammed, which I was not present to. And I could hear him saying, yes, I know I'm dead. My name is Thomas. I've got a 2-year-old. I've got a little baby. And get what I gave my life for. You need to get what I gave my life for, what I sacrificed myself for. Because these ghost hunters, nobody can hear them but me. And these ghost hunters are asking, do you know you're dead? And then I just I couldn't withhold it. It came out, and I just said it. His name is Thomas, blah, 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 blah. And so then I'm talking to the guides that are running this, and they're like, yeah, he was a sharpshooter. He accidentally killed the only civilian that was killed during the war, and they hung him for it. So I experience all these things. And so then they took me down to the catacombs, by the way, and asked me what I feel. And I can kind of see through my hands spiritually. And they're pointing to this area down, below. And I'm like, no, it's not there, it's here. And then they tell me that there was a baby that they think the mother had killed because her father was the father, and she'd been raped, and they had buried the baby there. And anyway, so yes and no. It's not like it punches into our world, but the thing is darkness it all feeds on fear. So that's something I've had to learn to manage, right? Is like, otherwise I'm surrounded by, and I've seen angels, I've seen all kinds of, I saw one of my children before he was born, he came to me, they're all different types and kinds. And just like our planet is filled with different kinds of animals. It's like there are all different kinds of manifestations of this energy, and all things in our physical world if it's in this physical world, it's got a physical creation, a body of some kind, this table, this chair, a physical manifestation. Then it has the spirit that animates it, right? And then there's darkness and light. And human beings were always kind of this mixture of both. And once in a while I'll see somebody that is just like, holy cow, filled with light, right? But mostly that's what human beings are levels of light and darkness. Trees emanate light constantly. That is what they are. So yes, we can. And I don't dabble in it. It comes and taps me on the shoulder sometimes. But because I don't fear it, then it doesn't have any power over me. And its intention is to own us, like our agency, not like the Exorcist or, take over like that, but, influence us to partake in darkness.
And so are you able to switch on and off whether you've got exposure to this? Are you able to choose it?
To a degree, yes. And certainly by virtue of how I'm living as well, right? So if I am spending time meditating every day, and I'm very connected to trees because I've had this experience with them, and because I can see them, and I can almost it's not like they have like human voices, but I can hear the vibration that they are. And so if I'm doing that as part of my daily routine, and I'm experiencing a lot of gratitude and expressing it, and being present in the moments, I'm far more awake and able to see light in actual physical form, spiritual light in physical form. And darkness, I just it's like that comes in with other people sometimes, but it's like when you approach that with compassion and of course a sense of safety for yourself. Just the thing is when you are partaking of light, you're creating this light, this barrier around you, and light and dark cannot exist in the same space. So if I'm feeling like a lot of darkness in a particular situation, I mind what I'm listening to in music. I mind the vibrational frequencies, like right down to, I won't be wearing a lot of black clothing. Like I'm partaking of light. I'm like seeing light. I'm being with light, and doing things that propagate more light. But it's not it actually serves us, it does serve us because it allows the light to exist. The light cannot exist without the darkness.
You talked about how when you were in the place of purgatory and there were people in the white robes, the dirty white robes, and then I can't remember what word you described it by, but you met God or source, or I can't remember your word. When you were standing there,
I knew him to be like a father in heaven, a heavenly father, which was like, that's what my background was. That's what I would, religiously, that's what I would have called him. And I don't know if I have a near-death experience again. Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it'll be a different near-death experience. Right?
Yeah, quite possibly. So you were talking about this person, how they were filled with love and with light. And was that a positive feeling? Because up until that point, there hasn't been a whole lot of positive emotion. Or
absolute stark reality is what it was. There was no, it was real reality. Angie, here's what you've been up to. And here's the impact of your actions.
Yeah.
But that was love, like truth. It was complete and total truth. There was no sugarcoating anything.
And then you talked about how you almost had the choice to come back. Would you say you had the choice?
Say that again? Yes.
Because you saw your sons and you saw how their lives would be regardless of what you chose.
Yeah, so it wasn't like I'm presented a choice. It was more like I can see now that everything was choice. All along, I had choice. Right. Will my own death all the way from the beginning. Will it? Don't will it. Oh, these are the suicides. As soon as I suicide, I'm in this dark plane. What is this? Purgatory. It's almost like it's the reverse, like I'm creating the experience. Like I'm co-creating this. And then, so when I was shown what would happen to my children, that is the thing that would bring me back. That is the ultimate thing that would bring me back. And so,
did you come back with any kind of purpose other than to raise your children? Did you feel like there was an ultimate purpose for mankind, or any specific message that you came back with?
So it's all expression of love. That's the purpose. That is the bottom line. That's the purpose of all of it, is to learn love.
Yeah, I love that. I hear this time and time again, that it all comes back to love. Love is the message. Love is the purpose. Love is everything that binds us together.
And there's nothing wrong with how we all get there either. It's like you can't have compassion without something to have compassion about. It's a conversation with this old man on a bridge in a park. He was walking his dogs and my kids were playing and petting the dog. And I don't even know how we got there because we went there so fast, like within 30 seconds. He's saying, this world has really changed. It's just awful. I don't see it getting better. And, it's really a terrible place. And I said, you could look at it like that. Or you could just take the view that this is really a prime opportunity to make a difference. It really is. We construct our own realities. We absolutely do. And so however you view it, that becomes your truth. So if you stand in the truth that this is an awful place, that's what you get. That's what you see, and that's what your life becomes about. Right. And I'm just playing this game of, no kidding. I play this like a game. I've created this is who I am. This is the embodiment of who I am. And it is no more war, no more hunger, no more Thai babies shoved into suitcases and sold into sex slavery, no more pockets of wealth and vast expenses of poverty in my lifetime. But it's not like I'm upset that it's not going that way. I'm just engaged in it because what else am I going to do with my life? That old grandbabies, I'm loving that part of it,
Yeah. So I understand that you're doing some amazing things today, that you are the writing coach and you're helping other people to get their stories out, get change happening. So tell us a little bit about that. And you obviously feel quite positive about the future. Is that fair to say?
I do. It's just going the way it's going. And there are no accidents. Everything is by intention. There are no accidents. Ever. Nothing's an accident. It looks like this 5,000 pieces of puzzle flying through the air with no order. But when it comes down, it's in place, right? Extraordinary. And so for writing coaching, I had this experience several years ago. I'm a writer by trade. And I went to a writer's conference in New York, and I was on my way back to the airport, and toting my luggage down 46th Street to Grand Central Station. And it was St. Patrick's Day, and there was this Like it was loud and sequins and, green everywhere and everybody's intoxicated. And I hear a man say, you can't change the world, but you can change an idea. And I look and it's a homeless man and he's saying it to everybody that walks by. So I have to go argue with him about that. And so I'm talking to him and he said, no, they changed an idea. Because I was like, Gandhi changed the world, Martin Luther King changed the world, Mother Teresa changed the world, even Steve Jobs changed the world. So they changed an idea and the world could do nothing less than follow suit. So I missed my flight because I was talking to him for so long. And we made each other a promise. And that was, we were going to make all the difference that we could. And I keyed Mother Teresa's admonition to, always help other people, like start with the person next to you, never worry about numbers, right? And that was his way. He had cardboard signed his way from Alaska, okay? And that was his way. And I had just like, oh, wow, I know some things. And I've been blessed with this near-death experience. I'm also blessed with dyslexia, which allows me to see globally. And I've distinguished actually what makes a bestseller. And it's like, wow, well, who can actually change conversations and change the way people see so that the world changes? Writers. We reach millions. Writers have the power to change everything. I mean, think about it. Kill a Mockingbird is fiction, and it had a big part of changing the conversation, such as God says. Star Wars made it okay to have this feeling in your chest and in your heart and follow this unknown force. It brought it into common language. Star Wars did that, right? So that's what I do. This is my access to changing the world, is empowering writers to make all the difference that they can make and I connect them with top deal-making literary agents, with publishers, with film producers.
Wonderful. We will let our listeners know where they can find more about that and more about you.
Yes.
Thank you so much for sharing your experience.
Thank you so much.
It is just amazing. It is incredible. So thank you for being vulnerable and sharing that with us.
Thank you,
and
Kirsty.
We wish you all the very best. Thanks for joining me on this episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast show. If you've enjoyed it, please share it with your friends, tell people about it. I'd love to get these messages out there. Don't forget you can also pick up your VIP access pass for additional content at patreon.com/Kirsty Salisbury. You can connect with us via the Let's Talk Near Death Facebook page, and I look forward to catching you for another episode soon.